chances are you've got the best tech that money can buy, the latest AI, and the biggest firewalls, but you're still losing.
That's because the weakest link isn't a line of code. It could be the person behind the keyboard.
Exactly. So today, that's what we're talking about. We're ignoring all the hardware and we're talking about the one probably most important thing of security. It's the human side of security.
Yep, this is episode 36 of the DTF Cyber Podcast. We are without Troy today. I'm Damien.
We need the Troy part. This is Troy. And it's your boy Fern. Let's go. So today, Troy is busy out there doing big things. But we have a special guest who hails from none other than the land of Canada, just north of us. Okay. I've seen him on LinkedIn a bunch. I've seen him all over the security world. And recently we just got connected on LinkedIn. So it's really cool to see how complete stranger online can go from that to a special guest on the DTF Cyber Podcast.
Well, stranger to you, but I've known Dom for a few years now, and actually I was on one of his podcasts a few years ago.
Yeah. No, I know. But we're trying to hype. We're hyping him up right now. We're getting him hype. We're showing how the cyber community.
Well, I don't want people to think that they could just like hit us up and be on the podcast.
That's true.
You got to qualify for this stuff.
Yeah, you have to be qualified. And Dom is officially qualified. So first name Dom, last name Vogel, legend from Canada, who happens to know our other Canadian friend, Gary Perkins. So welcome to the show, Dom. Can you tell the people more about yourself than I just did, since I barely know you?
Well, that's one of the nicest intros anyone's ever said for me, Fern, so I appreciate it. But I hail from Vancouver, Canada. And yes, I know Gary Perkins very well, known Gary for years. So I refer to myself as the ball cap and beard guy in cyber. That's if you like beards and you like ball caps. I have like 30 plus different MLB baseball hats. I have a bit of a collection problem. So that's who I am. I've been in cyber for 20 something years, past 10 years focusing after I burn out in corporate. I focus mainly on small and mid-sized organizations. I focus a lot on the human side, but not security awareness. To me, we always talk about the human side. We automatically think about security awareness. I focus more so on coaching, leadership, developing people as people. That to me is the overlooked part in cyber. So that's where I spend most of my time.
Okay. So most of the people that you work with are leaders in cyber that are looking at being better in like a leadership role from like a building teams and things like that.
Absolutely. One of the most common reasons why someone will reach out to me, on a platform like LinkedIn, where I spend a lot of my time, is they'll reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'm a CIO or CISO or security director, and the board's not listening to me. The executive's not listening to me." In fact, I'll give you a real, what at least I think is a funny story. 6 months ago, I had a CIO reach out to me. He said, "Hey, I've been at this company for 8 months. And the CEO never says hello to me in the hallway. I've never met the CEO. He seemed to take all the other, C-suite people out to lunch. He never chats with me." And I said to him, "Well, it sounds like you have a branding problem there." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Everyone really hates IT here." I was like, "Well, let's dig further." So we did some digging, and to me, I'm a big believer in the power of branding. And I said, well, often for a lot of organizations, IT, that first touch point is your service desk or help desk. I said, "Do you mind if I just call in and see what that experience is like?" So I called, and it was worse than talking to my mother-in-law. Like, it was brutal. And so I told the CIO, I said, "You know what? We need to work on some people skills, right? With your help desk." So he brought me in. We did some, I'll say workshop sessions with the help desk team. But more importantly, what we found out was that the help desk team said, "We don't have time to be nice or to try and develop relationships with people on the other end. Our success is measured by how quickly we close these tickets." So I said to the CIO, I said, "How about we suspend that metric and let's focus more on what I refer to as the a customer experience or likability index. Let's focus on measuring that, customer surveys, what have you, after people deal with the help desk. and let's train your team here on empathetic communication and that type of thing. And after 6 months, he started seeing great results. And he called me one day. He said, Dom, you won't believe it. The CEO passed me in the hallway, smiled and said, I love what you're doing with IT. Let's do lunch next week. And I said, that's awesome. Here's my invoice for the next 6 months, right? So to me, I'm a big believer in the power of branding. And again, it's when we talk about the people side of cyber, we need to go past security awareness, right? It's about working with people as people.
Dom, I like my mother-in-law. I actually like her more than my own mother. So, my mom doesn't watch this anyway, so.
I know the mother-in-law situation, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So, okay, but that's okay. That I guess that gives me more context on exactly kind of where you've done some cool things. So, okay. I like that. I like that a lot. So I think it's probably one of the biggest things that I've heard from, a small group of people that I've kind of come into contact with recently is everyone always says like, how do you communicate to the board, or like, how do you it's like a almost cliche, but I always hear, how do you translate risk into like boardroom conversation? And it's just like, my simple answer is you just be a human being, right? You don't try and approach it from a too technical perspective. Like the people that are in these roles are people. They understand money. They understand emotion. They understand like what your friends understand. But, apparently it's really hard for some people to like get out of like security world and think like, how can I just like layman's term what I know so that way these people can understand. Like, imagine I was talking to someone in my family.
It's not just board conversations, right? I think let's make that clear. I think there's a lot of people starting their careers as well that could probably use advice like that. And I don't know, maybe it's the Canadian in us, Dom, right? We're always known to be polite and trying to be more empathetic. So I don't know if that's really the case, and we're just overgeneralizing the different cultures between Canada and the US.
Top down, bottom up thing though, to your point there, Damien, like as important it is for executives, especially in the IT and technical ranks, to learn how to speak to boards and non-technical executives. It's important for them to know how to inspire and lead their team. And like you said, as we go down, the org chart there, it's important for those entering the workforce, again, new cybersecurity professionals, new IT professionals. The technical skills to me are table stakes at this point, right? If you really want to differentiate yourself, even in the marketplace perspective, you need to be able to be someone who's a great communicator, someone who's able to have a conversation without diving into jargon or your alphabet soup of acronyms. You need to be able to, if you're a junior security analyst, you know what, you should be able to take what your whatever dashboards you're looking at and be able to talk to other non-IT colleagues, right? I think it's something more and more as we're seeing a lot of crowded people or crowdedness, I'll say, in the job marketplace. Like you just look at how many tech layoffs have been over the past 2 years. There's a ton of people looking for work, right? And one of the things that I see, when I'm building out security teams, I build out security teams for some of my fractional CISO clients, and even the smallest of organizations, right? There's a small northern college in northern BC, so the province that I reside in, they opened a role for a junior security analyst. Normally, that in any other given year, they would maybe get, 50 applicants, if that. They received over nearly 1,000 applications, right? And they were overwhelmed with what to do with that. So if a small college in this isn't even in the metropolitan area, is getting that volume, imagine how many people are applying in a deeper metropolitan area, right? People are it's noise right now. So a lot of people in our space think, I know all the firewalls. I know all the technology. Look at all my certifications I have. Great. That's that's table stakes right now. That's not what sets you apart, right? So for people entering the field, they want to set themselves apart, learn how to communicate, right? Learn how to be a great writer. And that doesn't mean using AI prompts, right? Really hone in on your human skills, right? That I think is what is often overlooked right now.
So Don, what's your recommendation for somebody starting, right? Obviously that's a junior analyst role. So there's probably a lot of people just trying to get in the door and trying to show, hey, here's all the education I have. Here's all the certificates I've earned over the past few years. What do you think their first steps should be? Is it, obviously you're not experienced enough to go and write a full-blown article. what can you post on your LinkedIn to try to draw attention? What are some of the tips that you give people just to get started?
My first tip is don't just apply online. You'd be surprised, or maybe not surprised, how many people, and I hear people reach out to me and they're like, hey, I graduated 9 months ago and I've been applying to jobs online. And I haven't heard back. Okay, great. Well, what else are you doing? Oh, that's it. I'm just applying to all these jobs online. That is literally like sending your resume into a black hole right now, right? You and everyone else is doing that, right? So to me, how you set yourself apart is, we were talking about branding earlier. Start building out a brand. And again, you don't need to be an expert. Maybe it's just commenting on research security companies or companies with hiring managers where you want to work. See if they're posting on LinkedIn. Engage with their comments. Send them a DM, right? Go to networking events. It still blows me away how many people don't attend networking events, right? Go and purposefully connect, purposefully build relationships. And when I say connect, don't reach out to someone and say, hey, can I have a job, right? I'm not sure how many DMs you guys get from people looking for work, but at least a handful of times a week, I'm getting DMs from people saying, hey, I've been looking for 6 months. Can you offer me a job? No, random stranger. I don't know who you are. I cannot offer you a job, but I'll give you some advice on how to short circuit the process and get a job. Again, build those relationships, network. The most successful people that I'm seeing right now who come out of school or are trying to transition into this field, what they're doing is very straightforward. Building relationships, especially locally with where they are, right? They're investing time and energy in building relationships. They're researching companies that are hiring, and they're trying to meet those hiring managers where those hiring managers hang out. And they're building a brand. They're building a brand online on platforms like LinkedIn. Again, you can give comments, you can write content. You don't need to be some security ninja to share something meaningful, right? And that, to me, every person that I see as being able to short circuit that process is doing that. But the thing is, for most people in this field, people who are coming into the field, that's really hard for them to do. Right? They've been educated on, here's all the technology you need to know. Here's all the security tools you need to learn. Here's how you're going to be a great coder and all that. In post-secondary education, they don't teach you the people skills, right? It's something that we're missing with people who are coming into the field. Yes, they're great. They have great technical skills, but that, I think, was important, I'm going to say 10 plus years ago. We want people who are coachable. We want people who are willing to learn, unlearn, and learn again, because what's relevant today, easily tomorrow is no longer going to be relevant, right? So we want people who have, like I said, are coachable, malleable, right? They're willing to learn, not going to get stuck in their ways. So I think it's, like I said, those people skills that are really setting people apart. So that's the thing that I always tell people right now, is to lean into your people skills. It's not your security certs that's going to get you hired.
It's also, are you a good fit for the culture? I mean, Fern has a good experience in this area because he started to join a lot of the local community. When was that, Fern? Like 2 years ago now?
I was thinking I might have like firsthand experience with this. Exactly. Right. Cause, so like for context, for Dom, so he knows, I was living in San Antonio for almost 5 years, and I had moved back to Arizona in 2023. And, at the time I was kind of doing like my own thing, like consulting work and, somewhat sales and, 50% of the time. Right. And I thought, man, I really want to like get involved and like do something. Right. So I started showing up to local conferences, and, oddly enough, my wife, at the time we were in Texas, she was doing like a small business thing at home. So I bought a bunch of camera gear because I was too cheap to pay someone a bunch of money to take product photography for her. Right. And so I have like this, this huge lens. It's a 70 to 200 mil, like Sony G Master. So like probably one of the most expensive lenses you can buy. And I got a really nice photo camera. And I was like, you know what? I went to this one event and I met a couple people, and I took my camera with me and I just started snapping pictures. And then I would just send those pictures to the people that I took. I didn't ask for anything. I was just, hey, like, most of the people that I reached out to connect with just ignored me. Right. And the funny story is, when Jean listens to this, she's actually on that list. The first event that I went to, I took a bunch of pictures of Jean, And I tried to send him to her, but she never connected with me, right? And I went to the next one, did the same thing. Went to the next one. And eventually people just like recognized me, like, hey, like you're always here. Like, who are you? Right. And then that turned into conversations. And then some of those conversations turned into me meeting other people in the security community. Most importantly was Mike Manrod from Grand Canyon. And he had a YouTube channel at the time, and still does, that he posts stuff on. And we just started talking because, he saw my big camera like strapped across my chest. And he's like, hey, you should start a YouTube channel. You obviously have the gear. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. I've always thought about doing like a podcast. Do you think that's a good idea? And he's like, yeah, you should do it. So I just built everything that's around me that you see right now in the video. And I started doing that podcast. And then I started meeting more people. And as I met more people, that's how I ended up meeting Damien, right? He was hosting a dinner, and a bunch of people at the table were talking about me, in a good way, of course. And that turned into him hearing about me. I ended up reaching out to him at some point, and then we met for lunch at a place right by my house. And then that turned into this, right? And now we're talking to you. So it's kind of like, what I didn't do is I didn't sit at home and I didn't apply for like a security role or anything like that. I went out, I met a bunch of people, and I think maybe what was different about me is I was doing something that other people weren't doing, which was the photography. So I was kind of bringing something to them that I wasn't asking for anything. Literally to this day, anyone that I've met, I've never asked anyone for anything, right? I've just done it out of just like, we'll say, the kindness of my heart. And it's paid me back in spades, right? Because we've done a lot more than what I would have been able to do by just, getting a job and like kind of working in the industry. It's more so people, they see me and say, oh, hey, like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, we're doing this event. I was literally sending out texts today trying to get people to do panel discussions, right? I was asking them about that. So it's maybe like full circle for me, but it's been a long road, right? It doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's something that's important to mention, is that like, you don't just like jump into it within like 2 months. Like I've been doing this for almost 2 years now.
It doesn't stop, right? So even though you got started, I've been in technology and cybersecurity for over 25 years, almost close to 30. And I think early in my career, I got the same advice from my mentors. They kept saying, you got to get out there, write articles, publish blog posts, and just get out there and meet people. And I think it still applies to this day. It's not like we stop just because we hit a certain level. So if you're starting your career, it's important for you to do that. But also, if you're senior in your career and you're at the executive level, it's also really important. And I think that's, Dom, if you think about people you talk to, your people you're coaching, what's your breakdown in terms of like who's at that senior level versus, somebody starting their career? I guess they probably couldn't afford a coach, but I'm sure you do coach people starting their career as well.
Absolutely. And that's the thing in which, again, especially in a technical, what has been perceived for, or has been put as a technical discipline for so many years. In cybersecurity, it's, as a technical discipline, and, one of the things that when I go into an organization, I always say to, if it's a CISO or security director, I always say, can I see the training plan? What's the training plan for you and your team? Right. And more often than not, they're like, we don't have a training plan. But for when they do, it's all technical stuff. Yeah, here's the certs, here's all this. I would say, well, how are you developing your people as people? And more often than not, they look at me and they're like, never really thought about it that way. If we want our people to be their best, shouldn't we invest in them as people and not as just security people? And so it's really amazing to see this aha moment, right? And even talking to leaders, I would say, well, here you're talking about CISM and all again, these, don't get me wrong, certs have a time and place. I'm not here to trash certs, but most security professionals, all they see is certs. That's how I get better in my profession. You know what? Well, if you are a security director or a CISO, I'd argue getting more certs is point of diminishing returns. You're not strengthening yourself as a CISO, right? Go to something like Toastmasters, right? Learn to speak, learn how to be put on the spot. Go to open mic night and learn how to ad lib, right? Those are skills, people skills that most people in our field have underdeveloped, right? We've overinvested in our technical skills and we've underdeveloped in our people skills, right? And even stuff like leadership, right? So and just to use this example as an illustration, I had a CTO of an organization reach out to me, and he said, "Hey Dom, as you know, in the tech space right now, like everyone's on pins and needles, right? About layoffs, right? Layoffs could happen at any moment. We just don't know." And he said, "My team here they're chronically underperforming." He said, "We've gone through a 6-month period here where we're just underperforming." And I said, "Well, why do you think that is?" He said, "Well, everyone here is they don't know if they're going to lose their job tomorrow, right? So everyone is just in the state of underperforming." And I said, "Well, what are you doing as a leader?" He said, "Well, I'm just telling them everything is okay." I said, "Is everything okay?" He said, "No, it's not." I said, "Look, what your people need more than anything is for you to not feed them lies. They need you to be real. They need you to be deeply authentic and be deeply vulnerable, right? Tell them that you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Tell them that, yeah, you know what, we could all get laid off tomorrow. I don't know, but for right here, right now, I'll do everything I can to protect you guys, right? Just be real with them." And so he did that. And by doing so, he opened this level of communication and trust. And now his team, rather than just sort of, quietly not saying anything and underperforming, they started talking about their concerns, their worries, right? They started being vulnerable with each other, right? And we were focusing on that. And I was coaching them and coaching his team. And after about 3 months, he said, "Hey, you know what? Our metrics for success, it's not great. It's not where we had been in terms of high performance, but we can see it trending upwards." And it's because people were feeling safer at work. They were feeling safer that they could, tell their boss, "Hey, I'm worried that I'm going to get laid off tomorrow," right? And so by equipping him to be able to lead with empathy, with compassion, with vulnerability, right? In our field, we talk about the word vulnerability. We're all like, "Oh, whoa, no, we can't have any vulnerabilities." Vulnerability in the form of being a leader is one of the most powerful tools that a leader can use to build trust with his or her team.
We had that conversation, right, Fern, about not knowing what an employee is going through and maybe trying to make a little bit more of a personal connection without actually forcing it. I think there's a balance there of, I like what you said, Dom, if you're, as a leader, you're opening up and being vulnerable yourself, it kind of sets you up to hopefully be that listening ear for your employees as well, right? Because if you don't give that kind of empathy, and they don't see the vulnerability in your own actions and your stories, they may not open up to you. And that
absolutely.
I don't want to say, yeah, you absolutely have to do that. I just think it adds to better personal connections within your teams.
It's something I'm a big believer in. And one of the talks that I paraded around is something that I referred to as connected leadership in the AI era. And I'm a big believer that if we're truly going to be successful with AI and leverage AI to the ways that it can be usefully unleashed, that we need to dial back with what it means to be human and how to lead as humans. And to me, the most important leadership skills, which are chronically underinvested, and this is arguably in other spaces as well, but particularly acute in cyber, is that we need to be able to lead with authenticity. We need to be able to lead with empathy. We need to be able to lead with kindness, and we need to be able to lead with vulnerability, right? These are all human personal skills that are, like I said, historically underdeveloped in our profession. And like I said, there's other leaders as well in other areas where that's underdeveloped as well, right? Politics, right? So, that's an area where we could all use some opportunity to develop. So one of my favorite stories to sort of illustrate that was that I had a longtime CIO of an organization reach out to me. He said, "Hey, my help desk manager about 6 months ago just became completely disconnected. He's like, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's affecting the team. It's affecting everything. I don't want to fire him." He said, "He's a good guy. I don't want to fire him. Would you be willing to coach him to see if you can help him?" I was like, "Sure, absolutely." right? So I ended up coaching this gentleman for about 3 months. And after about I think it was after the third month, he opened up to me one day and he said, I don't like working in IT. And I said, yeah, I get that. Believe me, sometimes I wish I took a different path as well. I thought he was joking. He said, no, I genuinely don't want to work in IT anymore. And I said, well, could you expand on that? He said, well, about 6 months ago, he said, my mom died and she had been in IT. She had inspired him to go into IT. And he said, with her gone, I feel this disconnect about being in IT. He said, that purpose of why I got into the field is gone. And I no longer enjoy it. And I said, well, what is it that sets your soul on fire? What is it that you love doing? He said, well, it's actually marketing. I really love marketing. And so I went back to the CIO and I said, did you know that his mom died 6 months ago? And he said, no, no one here knows that. I didn't realize that. He didn't tell anyone. And I said, well, turns out he doesn't really love what he does. And he said, well, get the hell out. Well, what does he love doing? I said, he loves doing marketing. I said, do you think that there's an opportunity for him to maybe move horizontally in the organization, maybe take a junior role or something in the marketing department? He said, well, I'm good friends with the CMO. He said, let me reach out and see what we can do. So what happened over a span of a few weeks was the help desk manager moved into a junior role in the marketing department. A new person who was already part of the help desk team got elevated to lead the help desk team. And after a few more weeks, actually, I checked in with them after about 4 months, the help desk team was back to performing highly. And the help desk manager, who had been in a junior position, had already moved up a rung into more of an intermediate position. And the marketing department loved him. He said, the guy's coming to work with great energy and new ideas and everything. And I told the CIO, I said, look, you now have 2 higher performing functions here as a result because you chose to lead with empathy and kindness. The easy path would have been, hey, this guy's lazy. I'm going to fire his ass, right? That was the easy path. He chose not to take that. He chose to look differently, right? And to lead differently, right? And that's what we need people in our field to do. We need to lead differently.
You mentioned something about AI. I want to ask you about that because you said, in the age of AI, how do you see AI changing that? Because a lot of people are just using AI to respond, even like emails today, right? You don't get an authentic response. And then pretty soon, we kind of worry about this. We talk about the deep fakes and, do you even need to be on the Zoom calls anymore if you could just type out what you want to say or have it respond on your behalf?
My take on it is that just like, I'll use an analogy. During the pandemic, everyone did webinars. Webinars had this golden age during the pandemic. And you look to today, people I'd rather slit my wrist and go through a deal with a webinar, right? They're not what they once were. And one of the most hot areas to focus on right after the pandemic, one of the highest growth sectors right in immediacy after people were allowed to get together was the conference industry, right? People were craving being together face to face, being able to see people. To me, I contrast and compare that with the AI era, right? The people who choose to lean into their humanity, the people who are able to best leverage their human branding, they're going to stick out. Why? Because people are going to get sick and tired, and are already sick and tired of dealing with AI, right? In fact, there's from a customer service perspective, there's organizations that are now actually removing the AI robots from, if you call in and, you hit a wall, a bunch of different AIs. There's some organizations that are ripping that all out because people would rather deal with a human rather than having to go through a series of AI conversations, with a robot, right? People are craving interacting with other people, not with AI.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can tell the difference anymore, right? I think there's a lot of times you can be dialing in, talking to AI, and you think it's a real person because there's breathing, there's the pauses, there's the nuances, maybe the ums and ahs that a robot wouldn't do. That is totally happening today. So you may not feel like you're talking to an AI bot. It's just like a normal human.
There's to a degree, I'll agree with you there, Damien. But again, in certain instances, you're able to do that. But in cases where you are trying to develop a relationship or you're trying to leverage it beyond more just an immediacy from a transactional perspective, right? You cannot replace your leadership style with AI, right? While AI has great promises and you're able to again, optimize and have different areas of your work, maybe some of the more mundane stuff taken over by AI and done in a better fashion. One of the things that is sorely needed is, again, that human-oriented leadership. To me, being able to lead in this era, you need leaders who are very in tune with their humanity, right? It's no longer good to be a 1970s, Ron Burgundy style leader, right? You need to be someone who's capable of perform what I refer to as emotional triage, right? There's a lot of shit going on in the world, right? More people in a work sense are more stressed out now than at pretty much any other point, right? So leaders, if they're truly trying to unlock next level with their people, again, we can keep focusing on AI and leveraging it. But if we're not helping our people be their best, right, in my opinion, AI can't reach its full potential either, because the human factor in developing that and nurturing that and creating that hinges on healthy humans, which are being led from, like I said, a very human-oriented perspective.
I'm AI right now. You guys didn't know it though.
In 4K.
Yeah, 4K AI. So I'm kind of like with Damien, a part of it, where it's like I've seen a lot of stuff, especially on LinkedIn, right? I spend, I don't know, between like 30 minutes a day to an hour, sometimes just like scrolling, looking for stuff on LinkedIn. So I've seen a lot of, people that post stuff, and then people that comment stuff. And a lot of times it's just like, there's definitely, it's just like a lot of bots talking to bots, right? Is what it feels like a lot of the time. It's just like, all right, well, that's a bot that wrote that. And then the reply is like, well, that's another bot. And it's like, it kind of like, it reminds me of this dead internet theory, right? Where it's just like, no one's even on the internet. It's just a bunch of bots. But I think what's important is, like in your story with the help desk person that went to the CMO, I kind of look at that as like 2 points of failure, right? The first one was from the leadership, but the other one was also from the employee, because like, something that my wife always says is closed mouths don't get fed, right? If you want to eat, you need to open up, right? You have to say something, you have to speak up. And for someone to be in a position where they don't speak up, like things aren't going to change. And maybe like another phrase that I've kind of heard along the years is silence is acceptance, right? If you're silent about something, you more or less accept it. Like if someone's hurting you, you speak up, right? If someone hits you, you speak up. If someone says something you don't like, you speak up. But the minute you don't say anything, you've kind of accepted that it is what it is. So with that help desk person, I think part of the responsibility is for them too, to speak up and say, hey, and maybe people don't want to share their personal stuff, right? Maybe they might look at it as like a bad thing, right? But if you don't speak up, no one's going to understand what you're going through, right? And that's part of what we talked about on the episode with Vito, is through mental health. Like people need to be aware of what you're dealing with. Maybe you don't tell them everything, right? And like Damien and I had talked about how he approaches it, where it's like he opens a door and invites the conversation in, but he doesn't like prod, right? So I think for a lot of people in leadership, maybe just at least putting the ability to start the conversation is the first part, which is kind of where you come in, Dom, from the leadership side, is like you have to at least like kick the door open just a little bit, like don't wide open, but just enough to where someone can see that there's a room there. And then when they walk through it, that's them kind of doing their portion of the work. It can't be one-sided, right? So I think as both of you guys are speaking, I kind of see how two different sides can kind of still come together, where it's like leadership opens the door, and then the employee or the person that's dealing with something kind of has to step through. They can't just sit there and hope that someone's going to fix their problem, because no one's going to save you. Is really what it comes down to, right? You kind of have to save yourself.
For sure. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. But then that goes back to, again, the notion of developing the people skills on both sides. So where the CIO could have done better was that he did not cultivate a strong enough, I'll say, empowering culture where people felt safe, or in a psychological safe space to say something, right? Yes, we can talk about the importance of saying things, right? Particularly what, like, again, as a Canadian, I see what's happening in the States. I feel very safe saying things in my country, right? If I was in the States, I wouldn't feel particularly safe saying certain things, right? There's a lack of psychological safety, which is collapsing there, right? So the CIO could have done more to create a space where people felt safe to talk. And on the flip side, this is where I believe in coaching people early on in their journey, is be able to create the right, I'll say, mental resiliency and strengths for them to be able to say, hey, you know what, this doesn't feel right, or I need help. I should go talk to my boss, or I need to talk to my colleagues, or what have you, right? People need to be trained, because a lot of people don't have that inherent alarm bells to be able to say that, right? So that's why, again, back to the training plan, it's important to invest in people as people and to give them and train them on those human skills, because ultimately that's how we're going to get them at their best, right? It's not, like I said, this is going beyond security certifications. Those are important. We keep training people on that, but we need to couple that with helping people develop a lot of people skills that, like I said, especially in our profession, are underdeveloped.
Those are people that you're talking about, people who are already in the organization, right? But how do you go from the early stage where you haven't even entered in, or if you're a leader, how do you go and find people that kind of fit that culture, right? Or the openness and the, because we can go out there and look for people who are, hundreds of different types of certifications, and then maybe these script kiddies that go out there and, can do a lot of, technical stuff, but then they're lacking maybe some of the communication. Can we coach them, or are there things that we look for in terms of interviewing them that may help?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and one of the things, and to me, it's about being able to identify, again, those types of people skills, right? So in interviews, what I often advocate in sales that I do as well when I'm on the hiring side with my clients is, if we're looking for, like I said, a junior security analyst, right? Rather than just it being QA, I try to have more of a facilitation session, right? And see how that person holds themselves from a conversation perspective, right? I'll make sure that we maybe to bring them around and introduce them to, hey, here's so-and-so from the marketing team. You may be working with these people in communications, and see how their people skills are there, right? Often from the hiring perspective, we get, you go through how do you hire a junior security analyst? Here's all the technical questions you need to ask that person. Again, sure, all fun and good, but we don't go to the depths to say, okay, well, let's put them in the team here, right? Let's see, have the team ask them some questions, or let's just walk them around. One of my longtime friends, he's a CIO, and he said that one of the things that he does is when someone comes in to get hired, and this doesn't matter if it's a junior person or a senior person, they have a security camera in the main lobby there, where the secretary is. So if you come in, right, he watches the person come in, and he purposely makes them wait sometimes. So he'll just see how they are. And one of the things that he did was that he had one of the janitors drop something in front of this. He was hiring for, I think, like a senior position, and he said that he watched to see how the people interacted with other people. And he said there was 3 people he was calling in to interview for the senior role. And he said only one of them bothered to take the time to pick up that thing for the janitor. And he said he asked the janitor to make it look like he had a bad back and all that. And he said only one of them did that. He said he called the other people. He told the other people to leave. He interviewed that guy, and he said the guy was absolutely phenomenal. Right, that guy's been with them 5 years now, and is his right hand. Right, so again, it's a little extreme, but again, to me, it's about identifying people as people, hiring people as people. And I know when I entered industry, the lone wolf, the script kiddie, the person who could just do it all and didn't matter, it was okay. You'd put up with their quirks or what have you, right? That's no longer a good hiring practice, because that type of person is a cancer to a team, right? We need to hire people, like you said there, Damien, from a cultural fit perspective, from a team fit perspective. This is a team sport, right? Cyber is not an individual sport. This is a team sport, right? So we need to hire people that are going to make the team better. Is this person going to enhance the team? That's one of the things that I always like asking myself or asking my clients. If you're going to hire this person, are they going to make the team better, right? We're looking for cultural enhancers, right? Not people who are going to, like I said, just try and blend in and not be part of growing the team.
Yeah, when I look at junior analysts or interns, I kind of focus a lot on how they learn, not
Yes.
what they've learned so far, but how do you learn, and because obviously, if you're going to be in this field, you're going to be a lifelong learner, and so you have to embrace learning and want to learn. But how you get there is always a question that we ask, not necessarily what you've accomplished, what those certificates are. I love the stories when they say, you know what, my first time taking that certification exam, I failed.
Yes.
That's, yeah. And then you start talking about, well, why did you fail? And what made you succeed the second time? I love those conversations.
And again, that shows, again, people skills, levels of resilience, right? Being able to, they didn't bend under pressure, right? Ultimately, again, security is a team sport. You're going to go through times where there's going to be an incident, right? You want people who are able to step up in the pressure cooker or when adversity hits, right? So there's an example there, like you said there, right? Someone had some adversity, they failed their cert, and like you said, how they learned, how they overcame that. These are important pieces to hiring people as people and not hiring them based on their certifications or education.
So I was at an event last night, and they were talking about one of their tools, right? One of the tools that they offered. And the person that was presenting was the CISO for a small like repair shop. But when I say small, like they have over 600 locations. So they're a smaller like retail facility, but they do a lot. Yeah. It's a conglomerate that owns a bunch of different brands that does car repair, right? Like oil changes and things like that. And I think he said there are 570 locations in the US and they're growing. And one of the things that he had talked about was how the tool that he was looking at was way more expensive than a lot of the things that they were looking at from other companies. But that he has a team of 3. It's him and 2 other people. So a big part of his job is trying to find some sort of way, like what I would call like operational leverage with the tools that he buys. And he even told us, he said, we used to get calls at 2 or 3 in the morning from our provider that we were using before, basically telling us, what was going on. Ever since we've changed, now we don't get those calls. They just handle it for us. And he even said, now my team has more time to get out there and do other things like trainings and get better at their role. Right. So I think it was kind of cool to hear his story from, having a very small team in what I would probably consider like the mid-market space, to where he kind of saw the value in some of these tools. But once they went after those tools, they were able to reinvest in their people, right? And by reinvesting in his people, now they're happier. They're getting more training. They're kind of leveling up, and they're not being thrown into the fire consistently, where they kind of feel like they're just getting burnt out on the work that they have to do because they haven't invested in the tools that can kind of maybe automate some of it or take away a lot of the load. So I think that kind of like ties into what you guys are talking about, is when it comes to developing your people, like especially in like maybe the mid-market space where the security teams aren't, 50 people deep, 60, 70 people deep, right? There's some enterprise customers here in Arizona that are, Fortune 500 and they have less than 20 people, right? So these security teams aren't very large in a majority of these places. So what it really comes down to is being able to invest in technology that can help do the things that you need it to do, but not forget about the people along the way. Because had this person say, hey, we invested in all this stuff and now we just gave them more work to do, it just doesn't feel like they're benefiting from it. And I think at the end of the day, everyone needs to ask themselves, like, why am I here and why are they here? And it's always self-interest, right?
Well, so yeah, here's that. We are working on another episode for 2026 cyber salaries. This is a good point. Maybe we asked Don this because that culture, I mean, it's not always about money, right? And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, that, okay, you got a base salary, maybe you have total comp, but what are some of those things that, just intangibles in jobs? We talked about the people, But if you're looking for a job, how do you advise people to find really that great fit that may help your career in the long run and not just pay you a lot of money today?
I think that's important because it's money helps. Like, I forget the Kevin Hart joke where he says like, no amount of money will, change my life. But like, have you seen the dude on a jet ski? There's a joke about that. He's like, have you ever seen someone mad on a jet ski? I was like, money can't buy happiness, but a jet ski sure does. It's something along those lines. But I think that's important too, because a lot of times people aren't motivated by money, right? If they were, the world would be full of salespeople. But they're not. Not everyone's in sales, at least for work. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear what Dom has to say too.
If you're building your brand, isn't that a form of selling yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of people conflate selling with like other things, like the bad side of selling. I agree. You're always selling something.
Yeah, I agree with you, Frank. Because I think a lot of us by default have the negative connotations of sales. The sleazy, door-to-door vacuum salesman or what have you. But from a skill perspective, you need to be able, and to your point, Damien, you need to be able to learn how to brand, right? Even if you're, and it's something I wish I had learned earlier in my corporate days, that ultimately when I was leading a security team, if I had understood branding better and selling, because ultimately I need to sell my security vision and the roadmap or what have you to the board and what have you. If I better understood the approach to sales and branding rather than just focusing on security, right, and wrapping that under a understanding people umbrella, I would have been much more successful, and I probably wouldn't have burned out in corporate, right? So it is something, like I said, is a part, to me, is a fundamental skill. That doesn't mean, like I said, you need to get super deep and be able to, sort of be in the space of, sell me this pen type thing. But even, again, basic understanding of sales psychology and branding and how to be able to hone that, again, speaks to the fact that in our profession, and this is sort of, I keep hammering this drum, that we need to just stop focusing on just learning security. Right? So many people, and like I said, even senior people, I talk to CISOs or what have you, what are you doing to further yourself? Oh, I'm going to get, CISM or insert security certification here, right? We don't need more of that. We're past the point of diminishing returns, right? To make this profession truly elevate itself beyond just, in the technical domains, we need to, again, learn sales, learn speaking, learn the human skills, right? I hate the term soft skills. To me, it's like even if a CISO took a course on sales and sales psychology, that will make him or her that much better at being able to present to the board, or here's a security budget request for the year. That would make them that much better in knowing what psychological levers to pull, what conversations to have, right? So I think that's super important, like I said, from the grassroots up.
Dom, in terms of happiness, like an employee, going into an organization, how do you balance pay versus, career trajectory and things you're going to learn, and culture? How would you balance those things, right? Because if you get the best opportunity possible, but it doesn't pay very well, is that a good option versus an organization that pays a lot of money but has no potential growth? What are your thoughts there in terms of balance?
Yeah, one of the things that I'll say is that it varies greatly based on the generation, right? Like one of the things that I'm seeing with Gen Z as an example is that a sizable percentage of them are not interested in office work. Sizable percentage of them have no desire to ever become middle management or seek leadership positions, right? The fundamental nature of how organizations are structured, I think, are at greater risk with Gen Z workforce than AI, but that's a topic for another day, right? The stuff that motivates Gen Z isn't any of that. The stuff that really motivates them is the ability just to do short-term project work and to be able to work anywhere, right? As you go deeper into the generations, I'm an elder millennial. For me, if I was to go back to corporate, I would want some flexibility, some money, and meaningful work, and an opportunity to get trained and keep honing my skills. Right, that's what would be important to me. Right, and again, Gen X, you go deeper, the money piece generally becomes more important the older that they are. So it's I think it comes down to really understanding your workforce and recognizing that, and this is particularly true for tech companies, you can no longer entice best on best talent with pizza parties, keg Fridays, and a ping pong table, right? That shit worked in the early 2000s. That's not how you get best on best talent now. And that's certainly not how you get best on best talent with Gen Z as they get older and then more and more of them enter the workforce, right? So I think part of it is really understanding that you can't take a generic cookie cutter approach. It's being able to understand, okay, well, what is it that's most important to the different generations that make up our workforce?
So like Starbucks machines in the lobby aren't the thing anymore. Like
No.
you can save like I'm looking at two jobs right now. One of them, they have a ping pong table and a Starbucks machine. They have a wiffle ball. I actually know of a place that has a wiffle ball court on their second floor in their building, right? And I think they started using it for it was like what's the not tennis, it's the racquetball,
Pickleball?
right? No,
Pickleball.
Yes, pickleball. Yes, I'm pretty sure.
Pickleball is the next thing. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they use like this wiffle ball court for pickleball now, or maybe they're the same thing. I don't know. I feel like I'm old, just kind of figuring out all the new sports that are out there, or at least the ones that I'm learning about. But they, Starbucks machine, and it's like no one even goes to the office anymore, right? So it's kind of crazy to see that, but I think you're right. I think most people are just like, I'd rather work from home. Like I'd rather just like get up and walk to my fridge than have to drive 40 minutes to an office. Hell, I even know people that have to go to the office to work, and they've told me like, yeah, I have to do it 3 days a week. I'm like, really? I'm like, yep. And I hate it. I'm like, well, why don't you change anything? I was like, I've been looking. So like, there's people that are being forced to go into the office, and the minute they get forced to go in, they're already looking for their next remote work, right? Or
well, I mean, there's people on the other side of that, Fern. I see people who want to go to the office because they want to have that interaction, and so the 3 days a week is a good balance for those people who actually want to see people.
Yeah, but to that point, it's the blanket policies that are affecting things, right? Companies are not being smart, and they're just saying yes to you all have to be here, right? Rather than truly trying to understand what is it that motivates the people that make up your workforce, right? It's the blanket policies that collectively I think are leading to a fairly disengaged workforce, right? And I'm seeing, especially right now, most workforces that I'm seeing for the most part are very disengaged, right? And again, that has a trickle down effect, right? That if people are disengaged in the work that they do, that rolls up to affect the economy, that affects other things. So we're stuck in a bit of a vicious cycle right now, right? So I think we need to take steps towards making sure that we're having as engaged a workforce as possible, rather than, like I said, just trying to ram down these blanket policies down people's throats.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that and say, if you want to go into the office, chances are you have kids that are running around that might be a distraction at home, right? I know people that have 2 or 3 kids at home, and they feel like they can't get any work done, so they would like love the opportunity to go into the office. Or there's people that just like sit alone at their desk at home and they don't really talk to anyone. They want to go into the office, right? But people that are out there doing like meetings or events and things like that, they'd rather be remote and just do whatever they want. And obviously get their work done. But it's kind of like this balance where not every role has to be in the office and not every role has to be at home and remote.
I kind of disagree with that, Fern, because even if you're on meetings, web meetings all day long, I think there's the intangibles of running to someone by the coffee machine or going out for lunch with them. I'll tell you, if I'm doing meetings remote, I forget to have lunch. I say like 90% of the time, unless it's in my calendar to go have lunch, I'm most likely not getting time to go have lunch or even, have a bio break. How many times do you hop on a Zoom call and they're like, hey, give me 5 minutes. I need a break here. So I think that whole work from home and work remote thing was great, but you just don't get those breaks. And you don't get those human, interactions that happen naturally as you're walking to the coffee machine.
But I think that's the point, Damien, too, is that like it's what's important to you may not be important to someone else, right? And that's to me is there needs to be a choice here, right? We don't all have the same desires or motivations or what have you, right? So to me, it's about the smartest companies are those that are offering it as a choice.
I do think that what has to happen is the company needs to set the culture. and then
Yes.
hire people that fit that culture. Now, if you have people that are, 50% are fully remote and they never want to come into the office, never want to talk to you or see you face to face, and then the other half do, well, now you have a split culture, and that's probably going to be a problem for the organization.
100%, right? But again, back to the point, you need to know your people and what motivates them, right? You need to your point, cultivate the right culture. Otherwise, it's just going to affect the whole ship.
I got one more thing for you, Dom, because I want to know what a positivity troll is.
That is part of my brand. So 10 years ago, when I became an entrepreneur, I saw that there was a lot of, and I started leveraging platforms like LinkedIn to put out my brand. I noticed that there was, even for a professional platform, there's a lot of toxicity, a lot of negative energy. And having been just exited an organization where the culture was extremely toxic, and the boss I worked for who burned me out was extremely toxic, I thought, I now on my own, I want to just make people laugh. I want to make people smile. I want to be the reason someone, smiles over the course of the day. So I started using, I've always been a fan of, I call it just wordplay. I like creative wordplay. I love crazy metaphors. I love exclamation marks, or as my son calls them, wow marks. And so I started doing that. And I became known on LinkedIn for my comments, right? And fast forward 10 years to today, I have just honestly hundreds and hundreds of relationships, friendships that have formed for that. I've had speaking opportunities, work that have come, relationships that have formed simply because people are like, hey, you know what? I saw your comment today on my post and it made me smile. That to me is a positive troll, because I saw that the word troll had a negative connotation. Whenever I saw the word troll, it was, we got the, people are trolling. And it was in the negative sense. I thought, you know what? Some of my favorite toys growing up were trolls with the wild hair. They weren't negative. They were positive. I'm going to make sure that people remember that trolling can be positive. So that's what became part of my brand. And, like I said, it's early on in my entrepreneurial career, it stuck and it became a foundational part of my brand.
Do you think there could be too much positivity? Like, at some point, do you feel like, hey, there's too much positivity where it doesn't feel genuine, or, you got employees. I worry about this, right? If I say to employees every day that, hey, you're doing a wonderful job, keep doing what you're doing, I feel like at some point they think that's just all BS, right? How do you balance that?
That's a great point, Damien. And that's where, again, because positivity can be toxic as well, right? Like, again, in a situation where things are really dire, you don't want to say, hey, everything's going to be okay. That's toxic positivity, right? Positivity needs to be anchored with authenticity, right? If positivity is coming out hollow, it's because it's not rooted enough in deep authenticity, right? So to me, the best level of positivity is deeply rooted in authenticity, because without it, it starts ringing very, very hollow.
Yeah. It just feels like someone's just got a checklist. They're just trying to go through and like say something, make you hoo rah rah, and then they move on to the next person. And just like, man, you didn't even mean that shit. Like,
and to your point there, Fern, it is like a checklist. Like one of my former bosses, I could time it to my watch. He would always make the rounds. And, there's a certain day of the week and certain times when he would do it. And he would always pass people's desk at the exact same time. It was scheduled, it was proceduralized, and it was lacking in authenticity, right? So on Wednesdays at 1 p.m., when he would pass by my desk and ask how the family was doing, I knew that he actually didn't give a shit about how my family was doing, because it was very forced and scheduled, right? Opposed to like someone who is, again, rooting in authenticity, and you learn more about them and they're talking about their family or what have you, right? So to me, the best form of positivity and connection, you need authenticity, right? That's why A is first in the alphabet, authenticity.
Yeah. So you guys, especially you, Dom, right? You mentioned personal brand, right? And, before we get too close to the end here, I figured might as well mention something about that and maybe get your thoughts on it as well. So like Damien mentioned the positivity troll, right? And that's kind of something that you said you kind of took on is, troll has a negative meaning to a lot of people. So you're trying to, redefine it maybe in some way, but also kind of just be someone that's uplifting or making people smile. And I think a lot of people confuse personal brand with reputation, right? And maybe they're in some ways they're somewhat similar. And I heard that, I forget where I heard it, but I want to get your take on it. And it was that someone said, personal brand is not what you think you do, right? So I could say, hey, like our personal brand is we do the DTF Cyber podcast. I typically crack jokes. Troy's very serious. He's very well spoken. And Damien, very similar to Troy, but he adds in some jokes here and there, some personal stories. Like that's not personal brand, right? And what they say is, what this person said is, it's not what you believe of yourself; it's what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And I think that probably hits closer to like what it actually is because like people don't think of you as for what you think of, or people don't see you how you see yourself. And if you mix that up with personal brand, it's like you could think that because you do the right things or you do certain things that people have a certain expectation or a reality of how they view you. But the reality is they might actually see you differently, right? Whereas this person that you talked about, this old boss, to them, their personal brand was, I'm great because I go around and I uplift people. But the people that are being lifted are actually like, feel like they're being shit on because like this person doesn't actually care. So there's like this like dissonance between what they think that they're actually doing versus what they are doing and how they're making other people feel. So I kind of like, it's personal brand is how you make other people feel or what they say about you when you're not there. But I kind of want to get your take since, this is kind of your world.
I agree with what you said there, Fern. I would just take it one step further. Like to me, a brand is the visceral emotional reaction that someone gets when they think of your name. Right. And, for me, I love it when people reach out to me, and say, hey, you know what? I saw your name on my feed today. I saw your comment and I smiled. Right. I laughed. Right. Then there's my brand there is around making people feel good, right? It's that visceral feeling, that reaction. And to your point there, the reputation is what is it that people say about you behind closed doors, right? It's not necessarily the emotional reaction. Branding to me is very visceral and very emotional. The reputation is not. It's sort of the reputation is more the logical piece. And the branding is very much tied to, like I said, that immediate visceral reaction when a name is brought up.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. I think we're brothers from different mothers, right? When it comes to that, I think that's a phrase. My brother from another mother.
There you go.
We agree, even though we're like 2,000 miles apart.
We definitely agree there. No, and that's why I think it's so important that people invest in their brand, right? Because your reputation is important. Don't get me wrong. That's covering the logical side of things. But I find that you get the greatest success when you develop a brand, right? Because as humans, we often think with our emotions first. So if people don't have an emotional reaction to you, then that's not a great thing, right? You want to have people to have a great positive emotional reaction to dealing with you, right? That to me is a key catalyst to growing your career and just to doing life right.
Yeah. And I think the one, and maybe the whole part that ties everything back, even like from personal experience for me is, obviously with the podcast, I tend to kind of take more of a humorous approach to LinkedIn. Sometimes I joke around. Sometimes I'm more cynical. Maybe I just say the things that people are thinking in some cases, or sometimes I write them and then my wife says, you can't post that. So then I delete it. That happens a lot, actually, more than I'd like to admit. But she's like, oh, you can't do that. Or, that's not professional, or yeah, okay. So maybe I'm a little bit tame online, but I will say, the nice part about with the podcast and meeting people like you, Dom, or like Gary and Vito and all these different guests is it kind of brings people in to hear what other people have to say, right? And in a way, it's personal branding, right? For myself, Damien, and Troy, with the clips that we put out and the things that we put out and maybe the education that we try and put out. So much so that I posted something, when was it? Maybe a few weeks ago. And someone that I hadn't spoken with in a while, probably like a year or so, texted me out of the blue and said, hey, what are you up to? And I go, oh, I'm just, kind of doing some stuff, blah, blah, blah. And they go, hey, are you looking for a job? Because I want to hire you. And I go, oh, that's interesting. And this person was the founder of a company. They work in the data analytics space, and we had kind of worked together a number of years back. So I ended up having a call with him. I think, one or two calls, and I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened with it, but it kind of started out with, he called me. I didn't submit for a job to work at his company. He's the founder and CEO of this analytics company that does a lot of Google related work. And he actually called me. So in some ways, like putting yourself out there, whether it's through like content like this or podcasts or just doing something online, gets you higher visibility. And that visibility gets you either interviews or opportunities that otherwise you probably would have went into a black hole, like you mentioned earlier. So at the very end, right, we talk about getting out there, building your personal brand and using that as leverage. But maybe that's just my own personal experience. And I'm sure you've heard the same. So I think there is a way to link personal brand with business opportunity or like with new career opportunity. So I just figured I'd mention that, maybe get your guys' take.
I think that's terrific, because to me, the takeaway too is that there's a lot of noise out there right now, right? And like I said, there's been a lot of layoffs, and especially in IT and ranks, and especially in something like cyber, people like, hey, that's a hot market to get into. I want it, right? There's a lot of people trying to get into this market, right? So you need to do something to stand above the noise, and branding, having, like I said, developing that and working on that and honing that, that's the key, right? That's, like I said, the drum I'll always beat. It's not more security certifications. It's not because you're not, qualified enough or you don't have enough acronyms at the end of your email signature, right? It's the brand, it's the skills, the human skills. Lean into that, right? That is the catalyst for your career.
Yeah, but have fun doing it, right? Because if it's forced,
Absolutely.
It's not going to be genuine, just like you said. So yeah. I think get out there, have some fun, build relationships, and in the process, you will build your brand. Yeah, just be genuine.
Yeah. Be you.
Yeah.
Well said, Damien.
I like that. And I'm going to drop another story in here that Damien knows about. Is we were at a dinner a couple weeks ago, right? And the lady that organized it, crazy event. But like, people that would go to this would say this is probably the best event I've ever been to in my life, kind of event, right? And I text her afterwards and I said, hey, I just want to let you know that you're a single person that did a better job than companies with 50 plus people can do for doing this event. And her response was, thank you so much. I really love doing this and I enjoy doing it. So I think that's a perfect real world example of how when you do something that you enjoy, when you do something that you love, and you have a passion for it, it's less about the work and it's more about the experience, and you kind of lift others up, in her case through events where people now see her as like the go-to person for an event because of how well she does it, because she has a passion for doing it. So figure I'd throw that in there as a real world example. Damien was there, right? How would you rate that event, Damien?
Yeah, those events are always over the top. And I knew it was going to be. I already had like scheduling issues had to pull a lot of strings to be able to free up my schedule to be there. But I'm super glad I did. Yeah.
So imagine that. So Damien had a bunch of stuff going on where he found a way to get there when he could have easily said, hey, I can't make it. So like, it's that good, right? So props to her, but also goes with exactly what you're saying, Dom, is, personal branding, do what you love, have fun, and other people will see it and they'll want to either be a part of it or they'll try and figure out how they can do it for themselves because they're going to see all the, positivity coming from it. So I think that kind of gets us to the end though. So we covered a bunch of things, didn't really stay on track according to my notes. but that's okay, because the one thing that I like about this is it tends to be very organic. It's for sure 1000% unscripted, at least with like a lot of these talking points. So is there anything that we didn't cover that you just wanted to drop in there before we kind of wrapped it up, Dom? Maybe something that we didn't talk about, or something that you like to just mention? this may be the perfect spot to drop your link. You know how they say link in bio? Like if you're looking for Dom and you have a team and you're struggling with either connecting with your team or you feel like you could be better at leadership, click the link below. Right? Maybe that. I don't know. Whatever.
I appreciate you opening the door because that's what I was going to say. Like, so for people who are listening or watching this, and if they like the vibe that I'm putting out there, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. Dom McVogel. I'm the only English speaking Dom McVogel on LinkedIn. There's a German guy there, but he's not in cyber. And or you could find me at vogelleadershipcoaching.com. Obviously, I'll share the link with you guys, and you guys make that available, and people can reach out to me there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dom. I'm glad I could reconnect with you on another podcast. I know it's been a while.
Likewise.
I know we talk every once in a while and send messages back and forth. And I do appreciate the positive comments you leave me every once in a while. It does.
Well, I really appreciate you guys. This was a ton of fun. This was just awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys both.
Yeah, for sure. Whatever we can do to help out. I will tell you this, Dom, is the last time we had Gary on, who is the official security mentalist. And if people don't know, I think he was episode 17 or 18. Go back and watch it. He was at this event and we were talking to him, or I was talking to him about, his recording. He actually had someone that reached out and signed paperwork to have him on to do some mentalist security awareness training. I don't know if you knew that, Damien.
That's awesome.
But he told me that, and I was like, "That's super cool." So for this one,
yeah, that's a different Gary, because we were talking about a different Gary earlier. So Gary Chan is a security mentalist. Definitely check out his episode if you haven't. Seen that one yet.
Yep, Gary Chan. So not Gary Perkins, but I thought that's pretty cool. So we're gonna set the record here. We're gonna try and get 2 people to reach out to Dom. But you have to let us know how it goes. Okay, I think we'll put the link in the title description. Damien, anything that you wanted to drop in there?
No, not at all. This is a great conversation.
Okay, well, perfect. I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. So thanks again, Dom, for joining us. We'll be back next week with Troy. And until then, take care, everyone.
DTF coming live, that's the word up, check the feed. Yeah, forget the algorithm, plant a human seed. Talking HUMA and ROI, that's the real supply, you can't deny. That's Shout out Dom Vogel for the plays he brings. Humans over AI, yeah, we doing big things. Talking HUMA and ROI, that's the real supply, you can't deny. That's Shout out Dom Vogel for the plays he brings. Humans over AI, yeah, we doing big things. Talking HUMA and ROI.
Yeah. Watch the spirits fly.
Let's go.
It's all about